Let me tell you about a woman named Margaret. Margaret is 68 years old. She lives alone in a small house about 2 hours from her daughter, Emily. One Saturday morning, Margaret woke up early, baked Emily's favorite lemon cake, got in her car, and drove those 2 hours to surprise her daughter and her 2 grandchildren. When she arrived, her son-in-law, Kevin, opened the door. He looked at her, looked at the cake in her hands, and said, without so much as a hello, "We weren't expecting you." Margaret stood there frozen. She had called Emily 3 days before. They had talked about this visit. She was sure of it. But something about the way Kevin said those words made her doubt herself, made her feel like she'd done something wrong, like she was the problem. That moment, that feeling, that tiny seed of shame planted in a 68-year-old woman's chest for doing nothing more than wanting to see her grandchildren. I've seen this story hundreds of times. I've been a family psychologist for over 40 years. I've counseled thousands of families. And I'm here to tell you something that nobody else will say out loud. There are things your son-in-law might say to you that sound normal on the surface. They might even sound reasonable. But underneath those words is a very specific message. And that message is, you are not welcome here. Today, I'm going to walk you through 8 of those phrases. If you hear even one of them, just one, I want you to pay very close attention. Because your dignity is not something anyone has the right to take from you. Not even family. Before we begin, if you're part of the Strong Elderly Life family, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a video. And if you're new here, welcome. You're in the right place. Now, before we get into the 8 phrases, I want to address something I hear all the time from the seniors I counsel. They say things like, maybe I'm just being too sensitive. I don't want to cause drama. He probably didn't mean it that way. And I understand that. I really do. Your generation was raised to keep the peace, to not make a fuss, to put family harmony above everything else, including your own feelings. But here's what 40 years of psychology has taught me. There is a very big difference between someone setting a healthy boundary and someone using words as weapons. A healthy boundary sounds like, "Mom, we'd love to have you over. Can we plan for next Saturday so we can make sure the house is ready?" An emotional weapon sounds like, "We weren't expecting you," said coldly, with no warmth, designed to make you feel small. The difference isn't always in the words themselves. It's in the pattern, it's in the tone, and it's in how you feel after you hear them. So as we go through these 8 phrases, I want you to ask yourself one question. After hearing this, did I feel welcomed, or did I feel like a burden? Let's begin. We already talked about Margaret, but let me explain the psychology behind this phrase. When someone says, "We weren't expecting you," especially when you know you communicated your plans ahead of time, that is a textbook example of what psychologists call gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone makes you question your own memory, your own perception, your own reality. And it is one of the most common forms of emotional manipulation used in families. The goal isn't to correct a scheduling mistake. The goal is to put you on your back foot, to make you the one apologizing, to shift the power so that you always feel like you need permission to exist in their space. And here's the thing about gaslighting. It works best on people who are kind, people who don't want conflict, people who would rather doubt themselves than accuse someone else of being dishonest. Does that sound like you? Then please, pay attention. Now let me be fair. Everyone is busy. Life is busy. I'm not talking about someone who occasionally has a packed schedule. I'm talking about the son-in-law who says this every single time. Every visit you suggest, every weekend you mention, every holiday you try to plan, there's always a reason why it's not a good time. In psychology, we call this passive rejection. It's the art of saying no without ever actually using the word. And it's devastatingly effective because you can't confront it. If you push back, he'll say, "I didn't say you can't come, I just said we're busy." But here's my rule. If it happens once, it's a scheduling conflict. If it happens twice, it's unfortunate. If it happens 3 or more times in a row, it's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. You are not a low-priority appointment on someone's calendar. You are a parent. You are a grandparent. And you deserve more than being penciled in between a dentist visit and a gym session. This one cuts deep. And it's meant to. When a son-in-law tells you that your grandchildren don't need to see you often, he is doing something very deliberate. He is using the people you love most in this world as a tool to control you. In psychology, we call this weaponizing the relationship. Let me be very clear about something. Research consistently shows that children who have strong, loving relationships with their grandparents are more emotionally secure, more resilient, and have higher self-esteem. Grandparents are not optional. Grandparents are essential. But beyond the research, let me speak to you personally. I know that for many of you, your grandchildren are the reason you get up in the morning. They are your joy, your purpose, your legacy. So when someone tells you that those children don't need you, understand that he's not making a parenting decision. He's making a power play. And you are the target. On the surface, this sounds like a reasonable boundary. Every household has its own rules. I respect that. You should respect that too. But there's a big difference between someone saying, "Hey mom, we're trying to limit sugar for the kids, so maybe no candy this visit," and someone saying, "That's not how we do things in this house," with a tone that says, "You don't belong here." The first is communication. The second is territorial dominance. It's the emphasis on this house that gives it away. What he's really saying is, this is my territory, my rules. You are a guest here, and guests don't get opinions. But you're not a guest. You're the mother of the woman who built that home alongside him. And the day he forgets, that is the day you need to remind yourself, I don't need to shrink to fit in someone else's house. This is one of the most sophisticated manipulation tactics I see in families. It's called triangulation. Here's how it works. You try to talk about something, maybe a concern about the kids, maybe a family tradition, maybe even something as simple as holiday plans. And instead of having a direct conversation with you, your son-in-law deflects by saying, "You're upsetting Emily." Now suddenly, you're not just having a disagreement with him. You're hurting your own daughter. And what kind of mother would hurt her own daughter, right? See what happened there? He used your daughter as a human shield. He took your love for Emily and turned it into a weapon against you. And here's the most painful part. You don't even know if Emily is actually upset. You haven't heard it from her. You've only heard it from him. Because the whole point of triangulation is to keep you from having a direct relationship with your own child. If your son-in-law is speaking for your daughter, ask yourself, when was the last time your daughter spoke for herself? Let me be careful with this one, because the words themselves are not the problem. There are plenty of healthy ways to decline help. "Thanks, Mom, we've got it covered" is perfectly fine. That's respectful. That's kind. But, "We don't need your help," said with an eye roll, a sigh, a dismissive wave of the hand. That's something entirely different. What he's actually communicating is, your input has no value. Your experience doesn't matter. You are irrelevant. In psychology, we have a term for this. It's called dismissal of elder wisdom. And it is one of the most heartbreaking things I witness in my practice, because I sit across from brilliant, experienced, capable seniors who have been made to feel like they have nothing left to offer. You raised a daughter. You navigated decades of life. You survived things that younger generations can't even imagine. Your wisdom is not outdated. It is earned. And no one gets to wave it away with a sigh. If phrase number 3 cuts deep, this one goes straight to the bone. Read it again. Maybe you should think about whether these visits are good for everyone. On the surface, it sounds thoughtful, reasonable even. But strip away the polite packaging, and here's what he's really saying. You are a burden. Your presence causes stress. Things are better when you're not here. This is what I call a covert threat. It's the most dangerous form of emotional manipulation because it disguises cruelty as concern. He's not yelling. He's not slamming doors. He's calmly suggesting that maybe, just maybe, everyone would be happier without you. And because it's delivered so calmly, you can't even get angry about it. If you react emotionally, he'll say, "See, this is exactly what I mean. You're overreacting." Let me tell you something I tell every client who hears this phrase. You are not a storm that people need to recover from. You are a person who loves your family. And the fact that someone is trying to make you feel guilty for that love tells you everything you need to know about them, not about you. I saved this one for last because, in my 40 years of practice, this phrase has never, not once, come from a man who treats the women in his life with genuine respect. When a son-in-law says, "I'm the man of this house," to his mother-in-law, he's not establishing leadership. He's establishing dominance. And there's a world of difference between the two. A leader earns respect through actions. A leader doesn't need to announce his title. A man who is truly confident in his role as a husband and father never needs to remind anyone of his position. But a man who feels threatened by your presence, a man who sees you as a challenge to his authority, that man will use this phrase like a gavel. Case closed. No appeal. And here is the part that should concern you the most. If he talks to you this way, how does he talk to your daughter when you're not there? If he uses power and authority to silence you, a woman in her 60s or 70s, what does he do when it's just the two of them? This phrase isn't just a red flag for your relationship with him. It's a red flag for your daughter's safety. And that is why it's number 8. Because it's the most important. If you've recognized one or more of these phrases, I know how you're feeling right now. You're angry. You're sad. You might even feel a little relieved because someone finally put words to what you've been experiencing. So let me give you 5 concrete steps you can take. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. Step 1. Name the behavior. You don't need to call your son-in-law a narcissist. You don't need to diagnose him. What you need to do is name the behavior, calmly, clearly, and without emotion. That comment made me feel unwelcome. I'm asking you not to speak to me that way. That's it. Simple. Direct. Powerful. You're not attacking his character. You're addressing his behavior. And that distinction matters. Step 2. Talk to your daughter privately. This is delicate. Your daughter is caught in the middle, and if you come in too strong, she may defend him instead of hearing you. Start with love, not accusation. Try something like, "Emily, I love you more than anything. I've been feeling like things are tense when I visit, and I want us to talk about it. Not to blame anyone, just to understand." Give her space to respond. Don't force her to choose sides. Just open the door. Step 3. Set your boundary. This is the hardest step, but it's the most important. I will not visit a home where I am made to feel unwelcome. Say it. Mean it. And follow through. This is not a punishment. This is not you being dramatic. This is you choosing your own peace. And that is the strongest thing you can do. Step 4. Stop over-explaining. You do not need to write a 10-page letter explaining why you deserve respect. You do not need to present evidence. You do not need to convince anyone. You are a human being. Respect is the baseline, not the reward for good behavior. If someone needs you to explain why they should be kind to you, that tells you everything about where you stand in their mind. Step 5. Find your people. Talk to a therapist. Join a support group. Talk to a trusted friend. Or be part of this community right here, Strong Elderly Life. You are not alone. I promise you, for every comment on this video, there are 1,000 people nodding along in silence, feeling exactly what you're feeling. So let's break that silence together. Let me come back to Margaret. Margaret stood in that doorway with her lemon cake, and for a moment, she thought about apologizing. She thought about saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have gotten confused." She thought about doing what she'd always done, making herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at Kevin and said, very calmly, "I called Emily on Wednesday. She knows I'm here, and I didn't drive 2 hours to stand on the porch." Then she walked in, hugged her grandchildren, put that lemon cake on the kitchen counter, and had a beautiful afternoon with her daughter. She didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She simply refused to be erased. And that is what I want for you. Your peace is not negotiable. You did not raise a daughter so that someone could use her as a wall between you. You did not spend your whole life building a family just to be made to feel like a stranger in it. You are not too old to demand respect. You are not too old to walk away from a room that doesn't honor you. And you are never, ever, too old to choose yourself. I believe in you. This community believes in you. And I'll be right here, every single week, reminding you of that. I'll see you in the next one. If any of these 8 phrases hit home for you, drop a comment below with the number of the phrase that you've heard. You don't have to share your story if you're not ready. Just the number is enough. Let me know I'm reaching the right people. If you know a mother, a grandmother, or a senior who needs to hear this, share this video with them. It might be the conversation they've been waiting to have. Subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. Hit the bell. And I'll see you in the next video, where we're going to talk about 5 things you should never tolerate from your own adult children. You don't want to miss that one. Take care of yourself. You've earned it.